Give your sister your penthouse as a wedding gift, my father said into the mic, his voice booming over the chandeliers, steady proud. 200 guests froze mid-toast. My mother's smile didn't flicker. Charlotte blinked, pretending to be surprised. I stood there holding my glass, every eye burning into me. The music had stopped. Someone whispered my name. Then a man I'd never seen before rose from the crowd and said, calm but sharp, "Touch her assets again, and you'll lose yours." The hall went silent. My father's jaw locked. Before I tell you the rest, tell me where are you listening from, so I know I'm not alone. I used to think silence kept the peace. That if I smiled at the right moments, nodded at the right times, and never let my voice shake, my family would finally see me as one of their own. But peace built on silence cracks fast, especially in a house like ours. My parents loved appearances. My mother, Carol, believed perfection could be arranged like centerpieces carefully trimmed, polished, and shown off to the world. My father, Richard, lived for applause. Charlotte was their masterpiece, the one who could do no wrong. And me, I was the line item they couldn't brag about, but couldn't afford to lose. When people asked about my job, my mother would laugh lightly and say, "Isabella worked somewhere in finance." I think she never mentioned that I was vice president of Asia Pacific Development, that my signature could move millions. To her, success only counted if it came with a husband attached. Charlotte, on the other hand, didn't need to earn her shine. She was soft-spoken, radiant, the perfect daughter. She'd call me her big sister in front of guests like it was an accessory, a sweet prop to make her look humble. I played along for years. I funded the little things that kept our family image intact, paid off a mortgage when my father's deal went sideways, wired money to Mom for emergency bills, and even transferred $50,000 to help cover Charlotte's wedding. They never asked twice. They just accepted like it was my duty. The week before the wedding, my father pulled me aside. "You'll sit at the front," he said. "Your family, of course. Just remember it's Charlotte's Day. Keep things simple." Simple? I laughed later alone in my car. He had no idea what simple meant. When I arrived at the rehearsal dinner, the lights glowed soft gold over white roses. Everything was perfect, designed for photographs. My mother fussed over Charlotte's veil. My father shook hands with investors more than relatives. I stood by the bar, unnoticed, invisible again. Then Charlotte turned her smile, sugars W sweet. "Isa, thank you again for helping us with the expenses," she said loudly enough for a few tables to hear. I felt the sting in the word helping. My father nodded approvingly. That was how they liked it. Public gratitude that sounded generous but made me small. Still, I told myself it didn't matter. I'd show up, sit quietly, play my part. One more night, one more performance. I didn't know that behind their polished smiles, my family had written me into the program of the wedding as the opening act, the sacrifice to make their perfect day complete. The morning of the wedding shimmered with that kind of sunlight that makes everything look innocent. But underneath the flowers and champagne chillers, I could feel something wrong pulsing through the day. My gut always knew before my mind did. I arrived at the hotel ballroom early. The scent of white lies too heavy in the air. Staff buzzed like bees, draping fabric, polishing glasses. My mother's voice cut through it all. Sharp, commanding. "Make sure Charlotte's bouquet faces the left side. Her profile photograph's better." It wasn't a request. It never was. I was walking past the reception table when I noticed him. A man standing completely still, watching. He wore a charcoal gray suit and a tie flecked with silver, his posture calm but deliberate. He didn't look like any of the guests. When his eyes met mine, I froze. He gave a polite nod, then said quietly, "Be careful what they announced today." His tone was so even it almost sounded kind. Then he turned and disappeared into the bustle, leaving a chill behind him that clung to my skin. For a moment I wondered if I'd imagined it. But then my phone buzzed in my hand. A text from an unknown number. "They'll take what's yours tonight. Don't lose it." The words punched through my chest. I looked around, but no one was paying attention. My father was laughing with a group near the bar. My mother was adjusting Charlotte's train. Guests arrived in waves of perfume and noise. I stepped out to the corridor, heart racing. My penthouse. The one thing that was entirely mine. Every payment, every sleepless night, every deal that built it brick by brick. It couldn't be that, could it? Just then I heard my parents' voices through the half-open door of a side room. I shouldn't have stopped, but I did. My father's tone was low-measured. During the toast, we'll make the announcement. It'll make Charlotte's gift unforgettable. My mother chuckled softly. And Isabella won't dare refuse. Too many cameras, too many witnesses. Pride can be useful. Charlotte's voice came next, hesitant but pleased. Are you sure she'll be okay with it? My mother's reply was syrup over poison. She doesn't need that space. She has her work. You deserve a home. The blood drained from my face. They weren't just proud. They were planning it to take what I built and parade it as a gesture of sisterly love. I pressed my back against the cold wall, every muscle stiff. The chandelier light spilled across the marble floor inside, the room dancing on their smiles. I didn't step in. Not yet. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one who would react. I was the one who would remember. I went back to my suite without a word. The hallway smelled like roses and expensive nerves. Inside, the air felt different, still expectant, like the pause before a storm. I set my phone down on the counter and opened the drawer where I kept a single folder: documents, statements, payments, ownership proofs. Every number, every signature, every piece of paper that tied that penthouse to me. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at them. 10 years of work compressed into ink and lines. My parents didn't build that home. They didn't stay up through time zones or chase contracts that nearly broke me. They only knew how to spend what they never earned. I forwarded the documents to my lawyer with one line. Be ready at 8:00 p.m. Ballroom A. No explanation, no emotion. Then I changed into a deep navy dress, clean structured, unshakable. I wasn't going to blend in anymore. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. My reflection looked calm, but beneath it was a blade waiting to be drawn. I fixed the diamond earrings I'd once bought to celebrate a deal that saved an entire department. That night they would serve a different purpose, a reminder of who I was before they tried to take it away. Downstairs, the ballroom was already filling. The clinking of glasses, the hum of conversation, the soft strings playing in the background. It was all so polished it made me sick. I moved through the crowd, unnoticed my heels, tapping softly on the tile. I caught fragments of gossip. Charlotte's wedding is perfect. Such a classy family. Isabella looks tense. They had no idea what was about to happen. Charlotte glided by in her gown, glowing under the lights. I'm so glad you came, she said sweetly, her hand brushing my arm like we were equals. I almost smiled. Almost. Moments later, my father clapped his hands for attention. Everyone, please take your seats for the toast. My stomach tightened. It was almost time. I moved toward a corner table, the one with the clearest view of the stage. The guest quieted, waiting for whatever grand announcement he'd prepared. He adjusted the mic, scanning, the room pride radiating from every inch of him. My mother stood beside him, glowing with satisfaction. I felt my pulse steady, not race. Whatever they were about to do, I was ready. I lifted my glass just enough to mask the faintest smile. If they wanted a performance, they were about to get one, just not the version they rehearsed. The sound of crystal against glass rang out across the ballroom, 3 sharp taps that sliced through the hum of music and chatter. My father stood center stage, hand on the microphone, his silver cufflinks glinting beneath the chandeliers. Before dinner begins, he said, smiling wide, I'd like to say a few words about family. The crowd quieted instantly. Forks hovered mid-air. Charlotte stood beside him, the train of her gown cascading like a small river of white silk. My mother touched her shoulder tenderly, that performative affection she'd perfected long ago. I stayed seated a few tables away, watching. I already knew what was coming. But the human brain always clings to the smallest hope that maybe, just maybe, you misunderstood. My father's voice deepened. A family's strength, he said, is measured not by what we keep, but by what we share. My grip tightened around my wine glass, the crystal stem pressed into my palm. And tonight, he continued, eyes sweeping the crowd. We have something extraordinary to celebrate. My eldest daughter, Isabella, has decided to give her sister. He paused for dramatic effect, her penthouse as a wedding gift. The words dropped like a grenade. Applause broke out before I could even breathe. I heard gasps, laughter, a few cheers. Someone shouted, "That's incredible!" Cameras flashed, capturing the moment that was supposed to make me look generous, obedient, harmless. My father declared it into the mic before 200 guests, I thought. And I froze. I didn't stand. I didn't speak. For 3 endless seconds I couldn't move. The air thickened, the smell of champagne turning sour. Charlotte pressed a manicured hand to her mouth, eyes wide with fake surprise. My mother's smile glowed with victory. "Isabella," my father said warmly, "come join us up here, sweetheart. Say a few words." 100 heads turned toward me. I could feel the heat of every stare waiting for me to smile, to play along. Instead, I took a slow sip of wine. The glass trembled only slightly in my hand. My father's grin faltered. "Come on, darling." He coaxed the microphone, amplifying his cheer. "Don't be shy." The music had stopped. My heart hadn't. And then a sound. A chair scraping against marble. At the far end of the room, a man stood up. The same man from that morning, the one with the silver-flecked tie. His voice was calm, low, but carried through every corner of that glittering hall. "Touch your assets again," he said, "and you'll lose yours." The entire room froze. Silence fell so hard it felt physical. My father's face drained of color. My mother blinked, unsure whether to be angry or afraid. Charlotte clutched her bouquet, staring at the stranger. He began walking forward, each step echoing like a gavel strike. "William Carter," he said, pulling a sleek card from his jacket. "CEO of Carter Financial." The murmurs began, instantly gasps, whispers. People shifted in their seats. My father stumbled back half a step, recognition flashing in his eyes. "I believe you know my company," William continued. "We've been working closely with your daughter for 3 years now. The penthouse you're attempting to claim in this little announcement," he raised an eyebrow, "is part of her legal compensation package. It's protected by anti-coercion clauses under her executive contract." I could hear my mother's shaky breath from across the room. She reached for my father's arm, whispering something frantic. William's voice never wavered. "What happened here tonight," he said, "was a public attempt at asset seizure, and it's being live-streamed to over 10,000 viewers right now." Heads turned toward a nearby table, where a cousin from the groom's side had his phone propped up. The red recording light glowed like an accusation. My father tried to recover his laugh, forced brittle. "This is all a misunderstanding," he said. "A family joke, perhaps taken too seriously." William's expression hardened. "A joke that included coercion, public humiliation, and false claims of property transfer." He turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is what exploitation looks like when it's dressed up as family love." The room erupted into whispers. A few guests rose from their seats. Others stared at me with new eyes, curiosity mixing with shame. My father's business partner, Mr. Patterson, stood up, his face pale. "Richard," he said sharply, "I invested in your company because I believed in your ethics. After this, Patterson Industries is suspending all collaboration effective immediately." Then Mrs. Williams from Logistics spoke up. "Same here. We don't work with abusers." And finally, David Kim, my father's oldest associate, added quietly but firmly, "Neither do we." My father's hand gripped the mic stand like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Charlotte was crying now, soft, confused sobs that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Dad, make it stop," she whispered. But it was already too late. The house of cards had collapsed. I stood slowly, the noise around me dissolving into a low hum. "You wanted a spectacle," I said, voice steady. "You got one." My mother turned toward me, her expression cracking. "Isabella, please," she hissed. "You're humiliating us. I took a step closer, my heels sharp against the marble. No, Mother. You did that yourself, William handed her the microphone. Perhaps Mrs. Hayes would like to explain her behavior for the record, he said evenly. She shook her head, trembling. You can't do this, she whispered. I already did, I said. The crowd erupted again. Some gasped, others murmured approval. I saw phones raised recording capturing every second of my family's unraveling. My father's voice cracked through the chaos. Enough. This is our private matter. I met his eyes. You made it public. The silence that followed was colder than any scream. I didn't need to say more. William placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, guiding me toward the exit. Behind us, my mother's sobs rose. My father shouted something I didn't care to hear. And Charlotte's wedding day turned into a live broadcast of consequence. As the ballroom doors closed, I heard the last sound, a single glass shattering on the floor. Outside, the night air hit my skin like truth. Looked up at the city skyline, the reflection of my penthouse glittering in the distance. For the first time, I felt its walls weren't cages but armor. William stopped beside me. Are you all right? He asked quietly. I exhaled. I am now, he nodded. You handled that better than most would. I looked back at the glowing doors of the ballroom. No, I said softly. I just finally stopped apologizing. We stood there for a moment, two strangers bound by justice. Then he offered his card again. When you're ready, he said. I'd like to discuss something bigger. I didn't ask what. I already knew this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of theirs. And behind us, the hall that once celebrated my silence had fallen completely irreversibly silent. By the next morning, the clip had gone viral. 1 minute of footage, my father's announcement, my mother's slap, William's voice cutting through the chaos, circulated across every platform before sunrise. Headlines called it the wedding scandal that shattered a family. My inbox overflowed with messages from strangers, thanking me for standing up from women who'd been told for years to keep peace at their own expense. Meanwhile, the fallout for my parents was swift and brutal. Patterson, Williams, and Kim all withdrew their contracts. The company's stock dropped by half in 48 hours. My father's apology video suit, Tie Hollow Eyes, was dismissed as damage control. My mother went online claiming she'd been manipulated only to be drowned by thousands of comments calling her out for the slap everyone had seen in crystal clarity. Charlotte's perfect marriage unraveled before it began. Her husband's family backed out, unwilling to attach their name to the wreckage. I stayed silent through it all. I didn't need to defend myself. The truth had already done that for me. When William called to offer me a seat on Carter Financial's board, I said yes. Not for revenge, but for direction. Because for the first time, I was no longer surviving my family. I was rebuilding myself. Weeks later, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse. The city lights flickering like quiet applause. The same glass walls they tried to take from me now reflected everything I'd earned. Freedom, clarity, peace. On the shelf beside me sat a framed photo of my grandmother, her handwritten note beneath it. Don't let them take your light. I smiled. They never would. If you've ever had to stand alone at a table full of people who called it family, know this. You're not alone. Share your story below and hit subscribe. The next story might be yours. Story 2. At my sister's birthday party, my father grabbed a microphone and made an announcement that froze every smile in the room. Tonight, he said, our successful daughter, Venus, is giving her penthouse to her sister, Tara. 30 guests clapped like it was generosity, not humiliation. I stood there, heart hammering the key still cold in my hand. My mother's eyes dared me to obey. My father's grin told me I had no choice, and when I said no, the sound of his hand cracked through the music. My earring hit the marble floor and rolled away. That slap shattered everything, including whatever bond we still had left. The night had started like any other Carter family celebration, loud, polished, and painfully rehearsed. The house gleamed under chandeliers. the marble floors catching reflections of gold dresses and half-finished wine glasses. A string quartet played near the windows overlooking Atlanta's skyline. From the outside, it was perfect. Inside, it felt like a stage where I never got the right lines. 2 hours before that slap, I'd arrived with a bottle of vintage wine and a polite smile. My mother barely looked up. "Oh, good Venus. Just put it on the bar," she said, fussing over the dessert table where my sister Tara stood, surrounded by friends. Tara laughed loud, the kind of laugh that filled a room and demanded attention. Her fiancé, Ethan, leaned in to whisper something and she swatted his arm playfully, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "You look tired," Mom added without turning around. "You work too much." "I lead a company, Mom," I replied softly. "It's supposed to be work," she hummed distracted. "You should think about balance. Maybe help your sister get back on her feet. She's been struggling." That word struggling had become the family's excuse for everything Tara did. For years, she'd floated from one failed project to another, cushioned by my parents' endless support. Meanwhile, every time I achieved something, the applause was muted, followed by reminders to stay humble. I greeted relatives and family, friends, the usual crowd who thought they knew us. Aunt Nancy pinched my cheek, still treating me like I was 12. "Still single?" she asked with a smirk. "All those degrees, all that success, but no man yet." I smiled thinly. "No, Aunt Nancy, no man yet." Her husband, Uncle George, raised his glass. "Maybe if you stopped being so intimidating, sweetheart." "Men don't like that." Their laughter scraped my nerves. I found a quiet corner near the bar, pretending to check emails. Across the room, Tara based in compliments. "She's such a free spirit," someone said, "not tied down like Venus." "Yeah, another added money isn't everything." I sipped my wine and swallowed the bitterness burning up my throat. Dad moved through the room like a politician, shaking hands, grinning wide. He'd built his success on charm and control. When he finally reached me, his hand landed heavy on my shoulder. "You proud of your sister tonight?" he asked. I forced a smile. "Of course," he leaned closer. "You've done well for yourself. Maybe it's time you shared that good fortune. Family takes care of family." His tone wasn't a suggestion. It was a command wrapped in affection. I nodded, pretending to listen as he walked away to refill his drink. My pulse quickened. There was something in his voice. Final, rehearsed, dangerous. The music swelled. People gathered for a toast, and I caught Tara's eyes. She looked almost nervous, almost guilty. Then Dad raised the microphone, and I knew the night was about to turn into something none of us would forget. The sound of the microphone feedback cut through the laughter like a knife. Conversations stopped, glasses lowered. My father stood in the center of the room, his posture proud, his voice dripping with performance. Tonight he began. "We celebrate family generosity and the bond that keeps us strong." I already hated where it was going. Seen that gleam in his eyes right before he announced something that benefited everyone but me. He turned toward me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. And what better way to show that bond than a gift from one sister to another? Our hardworking Venus has decided to give her penthouse to her sister Tara. The room erupted in applause and gasps. Some clapped out of shock, others, because that's what you did when the patriarch told you to. Cameras flashed. Someone shouted, "That's incredible!" I froze, glass still in my hand, my smile stiff. For a second I thought I'd miss her, but then Tara covered her mouth in mock surprise. "Dad really," she said, voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. My mother dabbed at the corner of her eye, whispering, "This is so beautiful." My stomach twisted. I could feel 30 pairs of eyes turned toward me, waiting for me to nod and play along. My father extended his hand expectantly, his palm open like a demand. "Come on, sweetheart," he said into the mic. "It's only fair. Your sister's been struggling. You can always buy another one." Something in me snapped. The years of silence, of smiling through their favoritism, of writing checks and never being thanked. They all collided in that moment. I set my wine glass down the stem, trembling slightly in my fingers. "No," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear. The sound sliced through the applause like glass shattering. My father blinked, confused at first, as if the word didn't register. "What did you say?" I straightened my back, the weight lifting off my shoulders with every syllable. I said, "No, I'm not giving away my home." A ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. Aunt Nancy's mouth dropped open. Uncle George muttered, "Ungrateful." My mother's voice cut through them. "Venus, don't do this. You're embarrassing us." I turned to her. I've supported this family for years. I paid for half of this party, the wine, the chef, everything. But this is mine. Tara's eyes glistened fake tears. "Venus, please." "It's not like that." But it was exactly like that. My father's smile vanished. His jaw locked tight, microphone still in hand. "You're defying me," he said, stepping closer. His voice dropped low, but the room was so quiet, everyone heard it. Before I could move, his hand came fast and hard. The sound echoed. My head snapped to the side, my skin burning. My earring flew off, rolling across the marble floor until it hit the leg of a chair. The room gasped in unison. No one moved. Not a single person stepped in. I straightened, slowly touched my cheek and looked at him. He waited for me to crumble, to cry, to apologize. Instead, I picked up my earring and whispered, "Happy birthday, Tara." Then I walked away. The hallway outside the banquet room was colder, quieter, like the air itself refused to carry the noise from inside. My cheek still burned, my skin hot against the chill marble. I pressed my hand to it, half expecting to see his fingerprints branded there. Behind the closed doors, the music had started again, a desperate attempt to pretend nothing happened. That was my family turning shame into background noise. I walked faster, heels striking the floor in steady rhythm. I wasn't running. I was done running. In the reflection of a glass console, I caught my face. Calm, detached eyes, hard. That calm scared me more than the slap, because it meant something inside me had gone still like a lake right before a storm. I reached into my clutch and took out my phone. One tap. That's all it took. A single button glowing blue. I stared at the screen for a second, then locked it. No one inside knew what that button meant, but I did. It wasn't rage driving me, it was precision. Months ago, my best friend Kayla had warned me, "If they cross that line again, don't argue. Just call her. Grandma's the only one they fear." At the time, I'd laughed. I can handle them. Kayla had just looked at me and said quietly, "Handling isn't the same as being free." Now her words echoed as I walked down the hallway. The string quartet song faded, replaced by muffled voices. My heels clicked like a countdown. I stopped by a Florida ceiling window. Atlanta's skyline shimmered beyond the glass, all those towers glowing indifferent. Somewhere out there was my penthouse, the one they tried to strip from me with applause. My reflection stared back, half in light, half in shadow. The elevator chimed. I stepped inside, pressed the lobby button, and watched the doors close. My pulse slowed. Every floor that passed was another layer of control sliding back into place. In the lobby, the air smelled like white lies and expensive perfume. I leaned against the marble wall and exhaled for the first time. A text buzzed on my screen. "On my way." I typed one word back. Then I turned my phone face down, slipped it back into my clutch, and walked toward the glass doors. Outside, the summer night was still warm, but I felt nothing. As I crossed the driveway, headlights swept over the entrance. A black sedan pulled up, and a woman stepped out, composed, hair silver under the lights. She didn't look at me. She didn't have to. I nodded, once she nodded back. Inside, laughter still spilled faintly from the windows. In 30 minutes, that laughter would stop. And when it did, everyone in that room would finally understand what happens when you try to humiliate the wrong daughter. The quartet was still playing when the doors opened, but every note felt hollow. The woman in silver hair walked in heels, clicking like a countdown. Conversations froze mid-sentence. "Daniel Carter," she said evenly, "explain why you laid a hand on your daughter." My father lowered the microphone, color draining from his face. Mother, it's not what you think. Then tell me what I should think, Margaret replied. Her cane struck the floor once. You humiliated Venus. You demanded her home like she was an ATM. Her eyes swept the guests, and every one of you applauded. The silence that followed was heavy. Even the quartet stopped. My mother stammered. Mom, please. It was a misunderstanding. Be careful with that word, Margaret said. You've used it to justify cruelty for years. My father straightened his tie. It was family business. She overreacted. I stepped out from the doorway. I said, No, I told him. That's not overreacting. That's setting a boundary. Margaret turned toward me but didn't interrupt. She just raised her chin and declared, You have 5 minutes to find her earring. A gasp rippled through the room. Tara dropped to her knees instantly, her gown dragging across the marble. Guests shifted, unsure whether to help or hide. My father's jaw twitched, eyes darting between his mother and the crowd filming him. Mother, this isn't necessary, he said, voice rising. It's absolutely necessary, she replied. When a man strikes a woman, he kneels to pick up what he knocked down. No one moved. Even the air seemed to wait. Tara crawled a few steps, searching beneath tables. Her mascara streaked down her face. My mother whispered her name but didn't dare move closer. Phones were up now. Every angle, every second streaming online. Enough, Margaret said. Stand up, all of you. This family has mistaken obedience for respect long enough. She faced my father directly. You run a company, Daniel, not a kingdom. And as of this moment, you run neither. He blinked. What are you saying? I'm rewriting my will tonight. My estate, my accounts, everything goes to Venus. Shock rippled like wind through glass. My mother gasped. Tara froze. That's insane. And my father barked. You can't. I can, and I will. Her voice didn't rise. It only sharpened. You embarrassed me. You broke your daughter's dignity in public. You will live with that mirror. He tried to laugh, but it cracked in his throat. You'll regret this. Margaret turned to the crowd. You've all seen enough. Remember what you witnessed. Then she looked at me. Do you have the earring? I nodded and opened my clutch. The pearl rested in my palm, small but radiant under the chandelier. I walked to the center of the room and set it on the table. There it is, I said quietly. No one spoke. My father looked at it like a bomb. My mother's hands trembled over her chest. Tara stared, eyes glassy. Margaret's gaze softened just slightly. Venus, she said, you owe them nothing. Take your things and go. I exhaled slowly, like releasing years of air I'd been holding. Thank you. I turned to my father. You wanted obedience. You got silence instead. I hope it echoes. He took a step forward, desperate. We can fix this, he said. You're still my daughter. I met his eyes. Not tonight. Then I looked at Tara. You could have told him no. You always could have. She swallowed, speechless. Margaret tapped her cane once more. The party is over. Guests began to scatter, murmuring apologies and excuses. The quartet packed their instruments quickly. Even the air conditioning sounded like it wanted out. I met Margaret by the door. Up close, her expression was fierce but proud. You've done well, she whispered. They finally saw who you are. And who they are, I answered. She nodded. Tomorrow we'll sign the paperwork. I gave her a faint smile. Make sure you rest tonight. She squeezed my arm lightly. You too, child. As I walked, out the sound of heels and whispers trailed behind me. The night air hit my skin, warm, sharp, with the scent of cut grass and car exhaust. I looked back once through the glass wall, my parents frozen in the aftermath. Tara still kneeling, the pearl glinting under the chandelier. It didn't look like victory. It looked like release. A black sedan waited outside. Kayla leaned against it, arms crossed. So she asked. It's over, I said. She opened the door. Let's go home. As we drove off, the house shrank in the rear-view mirror, its windows glowing like fading embers. My reflection overlapped with the skyline ahead, calm, steady, untouchable. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just let the silence fill the space where their voices used to live. By morning, the video had gone viral. Someone had streamed the entire scene, the announcement, the refusal, the slap, and the moment my grandmother walked in. It spread across every platform with captions like, "Father slaps daughter over penthouse gift and family party, turns into public meltdown." Reporters camped outside my parents' house by noon. Dad's business partners withdrew from pending deals. Mom's charity board quietly asked her to step down. Tara's engagement evaporated overnight. Ethan's family released a statement about values and stability. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. The world was saying everything for me in my penthouse. Morning light stretched across the floor to ceiling windows. Kayla scrolled through her phone, shaking her head. They're trending and not in a good way. I poured coffee, the smell filling the quiet. They wanted attention, I said. Now they have it. She looked up at me, cautious. Do you feel better? I thought about it. The ache on my cheek had faded into a ghost of heat. No, I said. Not better. Just done. A new email blinked on my screen from Grandma Margaret. Subject finalized. Body. The paperwork is complete. Everything is under your name now. Rest. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and let the stillness settle. For the first time in years, silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. That evening, the city glowed beneath my windows like a map of everything I'd survived. I stood there holding the pearl earring between my fingers, its smooth surface cool against my skin. Then I fastened it back into place. The reflection in the glass looked like someone I finally recognized. People think revenge is loud, that it burns and destroys. They're wrong. Real revenge is quiet. It's choosing yourself and never looking back. I picked up my phone, typed a message to Kayla. Dinner tomorrow, she replied with a heart. I smiled. If you've ever had to walk away from people who were supposed to love you, I whispered.